I invited you to participate here. Thank you for coming here. Then I would like to thank you, Khagendra Thapa and his wife, Bimala Thapa, providing us the space. This is the beautiful space providing us, to organize the program, today's event. Then I'd like to thank everyone who come to, make this event success. Then, that gentleman is not here. His name is Niranjan Thapa Chetri. He helped us to, this event also, that is things. I want to thank him, Niranjan Thapa Chetri, his work, today he has to work. He cannot take off,
yes,
but he helped us. This is the gentleman, he is the owner of this restaurant,
Oh, that's good to meet you. Good to meet you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for,
What a beautiful restaurant.
Yeah, it is beautiful. He told me that, okay, I asked him, this is the place I want to organize, Mr. Whitson, I need to organize any place. Close to my house, a lot of restaurant, but we spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a little bit, high price. Then I talked to him. Don't worry about it. We'll do our restaurant here. This is we have inside hall. About 31 people.
Yeah.
We can stay here. Then that is his idea.
Yeah.
That is the reason I told him. Sunday is the parking space easy to park in this area.
Yeah.
That is the reason I asked you give me the Sunday time.
Yes.
This is the things. Let me talk about the Mr. Whitson. He is a U.S. Army combat veteran and a former FBI agent. Now working one of our country's leading conservative think tank. Then he always, advocate conservative value in the capital nowadays he's doing it. Hopefully, when he is going to elected, 11th district congressman, then will help us, not only the 11th district, especially our Nepali community. I hope that is he will help us in everything here, our community to grow up. Our community is very small minority community, but you help us how to get it all the government things. We can get it easily, those kind of things. I'm doing there. Now, Mr. Whitson is talking about with you. You don't have to stand. We can talk, and we are a small group. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll just do a quick introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So first and foremost, thank you so much to my friend Sridhar for putting this together, and thank you to the owner of the restaurant for allowing us to use this beautiful space. I mean, it is what a beautiful place. I love Alexandria is just beautiful to walk through. So what a great to have a location here is amazing. Even more beautiful inside, and then have a great group of people. Because I know you have busy lives, you have other things going on, and so you took time out of your schedule to come here and meet and talk, and so I appreciate you doing that. So my quick background, like Sridhar said, I'm an Army combat veteran, so I led over 300 combat missions in Iraq, including a mission that led to the successful rescue of a hostage. When I came home from Iraq, and I started law school, and so I went to law school. I worked, while I was going to law school, I worked full-time as a prosecutor, so putting away bad guys, trying to make our community safe, and then I also worked as a company commander in the Army National Guard. And when I got out of law school, I thought I was going to be a prosecutor, but instead God had different plans for me, and I ended up joining the FBI. And so I spent a decade in the FBI working international terrorism, so I worked Islamic terrorism, ISIS cases, those kind of things. But I was also part of the FBI SWAT team, what the FBI SWAT team does is whenever there's local police and they're up against criminals that are so dangerous the local police can't take care of them themselves, then they reach out to the FBI and ask the SWAT team to come in and help. And so the place where I was located, I always tell this story, so when you apply to the government, you fill out this thing called a dream sheet. And so when I went to the FBI Academy and I got done, I filled out my dream sheet of all the places I wanted to live. And I got my 17th pick on my dream sheet. It shows you what the FBI thought of me, but it was Arizona. And so my wife and I went out there. And so all this to say, being on the SWAT team, the high risk arrests I was doing were Mexican cartel, Mexican gangs. It was because it was all along the southern border. And so I've seen firsthand the violence that can come across the border. And I'll tell you this, the MS-13 and those other gangs, they are no less violent than ISIS. What they will do to their enemies is no less violent than ISIS. And so it is terrifying. These are not groups that are armed with handguns and robbing people. They're groups armed with AK-47 assault rifles, and they're basically military grade. And so what happened was for 4 years, the Biden administration opened up the border wide open and just allowed anyone who wanted to flood across the border. And so never mind the fact that that's unfair to people that did it the right way and have been standing in line and trying to get legal citizenship, never mind that. What I'm focusing on is the public safety part of it. So he opened up the border, 1.7 million known gotaways during his time in office. What's a known gotaway? That means the federal agents stopped someone and they were dealing with them and they looked over and they could see other people illegally crossing into the country, but they couldn't leave the group they're with because then that group would get away, so they had to just document them. All right, I see 10 people. And all that added up to 1.7 million known gotaways. Those are numbers from the Biden administration themselves. And so what happened with all that violence? It went not just along the southern border, but it went to sanctuary cities across the nation. And one of those was Fairfax County, where we live. So the opponent I'm running against promoted what's called a sanctuary policy. So he forbid Fairfax County employees from cooperating with federal employees to get rid of dangerous criminals who were arrested after they came here. And so I want to make sure that's clear. So these are people that violate, not just illegal immigrants, but they then got here and they committed robbery or burglary or rape. And they were put into county jail. And before they released, instead of turning them over to the federal authorities, which would have kicked them out of the country, he left them back into Fairfax County. And so over 1,000 people were released who had those kind of criminal backgrounds just into our communities. And so obviously I couldn't be more different being a former federal law enforcement officer. I'm someone that I would never support that kind of policy. He is, and I think that's really hurting our communities, especially our legal immigrant communities, because a lot of this violence, that's where it's going to. And so we have to stop it. We have to stand up and stop that right away. It should be very easy for legal immigrants to get their path to becoming a citizen, and hard for those that don't do it the right way is really the simple truth. But even more important, we have to focus on the violent people that are making us less safe. And so fast forward, I moved, so I was in Arizona, I came out here, the National Counterterrorism Center is in Tyson's Corner in our district. And so I came out there, I stood up an Iranian-based terrorist group within the FBI, so it focused on Hamas and Hezbollah. And then I went over to Hoover and started rising through the ranks. But then when Biden got elected, everything changed. The focus at the FBI was focusing on, what I thought were legitimate threats that the FBI needed to be involved in, Islamic terrorism and other things like that, with ISIS, those kind of groups. Instead, they started focusing on other things. And so I left the FBI and I joined a conservative think tank. And so for 4.5 years, I've been in the trenches fighting to advance conservative policies to improve people's lives, not just in our district, but across the country. And so all that to say, I'm someone that if I'm elected, on day one, there's no on-the-job training. This is what I do, is to help advance policy on Capitol Hill. And so I know how to do that, I know the rules, and I know which committees are involved, all that. And so I can help do big things right away and get conservative policies passed. And so that's what I want to try to do. And so the last thing I'll say about my background before maybe we can open it up to questions or anything, but I've been married for 20 years to my wife, Melissa. We have 5 school-aged children. 2 of them are in public high school in Fairfax County, and 3 of them are in a private Catholic school because we're Catholic. And we had started off in the elementary schools, and we actually loved our teachers and we were happy there. But one of our children brought home one of those graphic novels in her backpack. And we wouldn't even have known it, but she brought it out. She was so proud because it was a remake of a classic novel called Little Women, sorry. And she showed it to me. That's one of the books we have on our shelves, and she thought her dad would be so proud that she had picked that one out herself because it was on the thing. And so I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And we started flipping through it, and about halfway through, it just started introducing inappropriate concepts that you can imagine, but basically pushing. There was a male character in the book has a love interest with a female character, and in this graphic novel made for kids, that male character is changed into a woman. And so they start to have a romance halfway through the book. And so the point being, why? Like, why would you do that? Why would you create a graphic novel of a classic and change the sex of a character unless you had some sort of political agenda you're trying to quietly push? And so all that to say is we realize, we love our teachers, but you can't control necessarily everyone else in the school. And so that's the thing that worries me, though, is we had the ability to leave if we had an environment, but there's a lot of people that don't, or maybe they don't have parents that happen to come across the book like we did. And so that worries me, and so that's why a big part of my platform is school choice, is just taking all the money that they're just giving to the school districts. Instead, I think should go to the parents first, and then the parents can decide where to spend that. And so if the parents want to stay at their public school, which we are, we have 2 of our kids are at Langley High School, and we're happy there, and so we want to stay there, then we would take that money and give it to the high school. But if we aren't happy, we should be able to move. And the reason I think that's so important is if you don't have the ability to choose to walk away, then they can do whatever they want. The school boards can pass whatever they want, they can force whatever they want on you, ideology on you, and you can't do anything about it if you don't have choice. But if you do have choice, they know that, and so they won't be as aggressive in pushing that stuff. So I think it'll actually correct a lot of the problems. I don't think we'll have to go to other schools, but we have to have that choice. And then the other thing is with kids is, I can't even believe this is an issue on the campaign trail, but it's keeping boys out of girls' private spaces. And so I don't know if you've been following it, but there is a convicted pedophile, convicted, with children doing inappropriate things, who was named Richard Cox. And he was going around to recreational facilities and gyms throughout Fairfax County and going into the women's locker rooms and watching little girls change and women change. And was arrested by Fairfax County and then released because of the soft on crime policies. He then went and kept doing it in Arlington, which is not in Fairfax County. They arrested him and charged him. And only after that happened did the video come out, because they had surveillance video at all those rec centers inside our district showing this guy going in there where little kids are at. And let me tell you why this is a problem. I have 3 young girls. Sometimes I take them to the pool and their mom's not with me, and they have to go into the girls' changing room. I can't go in there with them. They open the door, they go in there, and I say, okay, I'll be on the other side waiting for you. And I do that trusting that they're gonna be inside, it's just other women and girls, and they're gonna be safe. And so that, because of their policies, that's not the case. And so when this whole thing came out with Richard Cox, guess what the opponent, the guy I'm running against, guess what he had to say about it? Nothing. Nothing. He never once came out and said, this is wrong, we have to stop this, because their party, the Democrat Party, is not the same Democrat Party of 10 years ago. If you were a Democrat Party, you would be considered a right-wing extremist. Like someone like Bill Clinton in today's party. They have been hijacked by elements, and so this is just crazy. I cannot believe that's a campaign issue, but my opponent won't stand up to stop that, and I of course will. And so it's not just boys and girls sports, it's literally boys and girls private spaces. And the last thing I'll say on this is their argument. They think a boy or a man who identifies as a woman has a civil right to be in a girl's locker room, and that if you don't let him go into that locker room, you're violating his civil rights. That's their argument. I'm on the total opposite side of that. My argument is no. The girls and the women have a civil right to go into a locker room that's designated for women only, and know that men will not be allowed to just walk in there and watch them change. That is their civil right that's being violated. And so we are very different on all these issues. We had a public debate, and I called him out on that and gave him an opportunity to correct the record. I said, if you don't believe this, speak right now. You get to speak right after I'm done. So you can say, if I'm making this up, if this isn't true, I want you to say something. And you know what he said? Nothing. He just stayed on the script, didn't even respond to it. And so go watch that video yourself if you want to see. But these are the kind of things that we cannot allow people to be in our community, voting for us, like representing us in Congress, if this is where their values are at. It's not okay. And then, the very last thing is just public safety. So because I have 5 kids and my wife, is out alone and things like that, we have to live in a community that's safe. And it's just unacceptable to live in a prosperous, look at this beautiful place we live in, for it not to be 100% safe is just unacceptable. And so the other side, soft on crime policies, is what's hurting us. So Steve Descano is their prosecutor. He thinks his job is to be a social worker and not a prosecutor. We need social work. Social workers are good. We need those, but we need prosecutors to also prosecute the law. And so he's not doing that. And so what do we do then? We need to have principled conservatives who believe in public safety in leadership positions so they can do that. And I'm one of those. And so in Congress, I can use oversight power to hold them accountable. I can share that information with Attorney General Miyares, who's running, who we also need to get elected, and he can help hold them to the fire. I can strengthen federal criminal laws and we can use federal law enforcement officers to arrest the very violent and dangerous people they won't. And I'll give you this fact, The vast majority of the crime, 90% of the violent crime that happens by 5% of the criminals that just do it over and over again. So it isn't just a matter of going out and arresting every single criminal. If you just focus on that 5% most heinous, the gang leaders, all those folks, and you take them off the street, you'll get a lot more peace. And so that's something the federal government can come in and target those people. And I'll say this, if you don't think MS-13 and all that violence is up in our area, Google the MS-13 guy. So Kash Patel, when he took over the FBI, one of the first things he did was arrest the number 3 guy in MS-13 was living on the edge of our county. And do you think he was here alone? Do you think the number 3 guy in MS-13 was just hanging out alone in a house, didn't have any other captains beneath him or other soldiers or part of their gangs? No, they're here in our midst, and they're preying on people in our community. They're preying on the Hispanic community, dragging good kids into a life of crime. They're victimizing young women, and so all that has to stop. And so those are the big things I'm focusing on. I also, lowering taxes is a huge thing. I know it is a separate thing, but that's the other thing. The guy I'm running against, the meals tax. So this beautiful restaurant right now, there's already a 6% sales tax. Every time people buy something, they have to pay 6%. But this guy added 4% to that. And we voted twice. They tried to pass this through a referendum. Twice we said we do not want a 4% meals tax because A, that's going to make my food more expensive. B, all the people that he's employing, if customers are having to pay 10% every time they come in, they're going to buy a little less. They're going to go out to eat a little less often. That's going to hurt not just his bottom line, but his employees. He's going to be able to hire less people. And so it's a crippling thing, but it's never enough for the other side when it comes to taxes. The bag tax, every time you go to the grocery store and you have to pay that little bit of tax, that's because they're running out of things to tax. And so they're just trying to come up with new things. The car tax, you just got real estate taxes. Your real estate taxes have gone up 60% in 10 years. And what's the response? The guy that I'm running against raised it another 7%. And so because he knows a lot of people don't see that, they're already paying their mortgage, and they just kind of get a notice at the end of the year, oh yeah, your payment's gone up. And you're just like, ooh man, I don't know why this is going up. And you don't realize that it's because of this guy. These are the guys who are causing that to happen, but you just kind of, I'm saying you, but me, if I see something like that, I just think, oh man, it's just like, and so we have to stop it. It's never enough. And so if this guy gets into the federal government, it's going to become even worse. And so anyway, all that to say, it's great to see everyone. I do want to open it up to questions so we can talk about whatever issues are important to you. But check out my website too. I will say this. So I keep saying this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm sorry. But the other thing, to support what we're trying to do, there's a few things you can do. The most important is vote. Vote early. And I know not everyone in here is in the 11th district, but I guarantee you know a lot of people who are. And the special election I'm in right now is winnable if we turn out votes. So normally the district I'm running in cannot be won by a Republican. Mathematically, for 16 years, we never had a choice. But now with the special election dynamics, we do if people turn out. And so that's the number one thing you can do is if you're in the 11th district, go vote early in person. If you vote early, we stop wasting resources trying to turn you out, and instead we send direct mail and other things to other people. So it's a big value add if you can do that. The number 2 thing is campaign contributions. So even if you're not in the 11th district, all these issues I'm talking about don't stop on the border of Fairfax County. Like MS-13 doesn't get to the edge of Fairfax County and then go back to the other side. It's all coming across. And so having a strong principled person, if you care about these same values, and I know you do because of the public safety, remember when I talked to and for family values, 100%. But if we want to stop that, if you give contributions, even little bit amounts, we put that to work right away to do the outreach and get the turnout, and it will make a difference. And so I humbly ask you, if you can contribute, to please do that. And if you can't, and you know other people who can, you just sending an email to 1 or 2 people and you say, hey, I met with this, and if this is true, you say, hey, I met with this guy, he's a good man, married for 20 years, has 5 kids, he cares about the things we care about. The other guy couldn't be more different. You should just check them out. And if you agree with me, if you look at their 2 websites, I'm the only candidate who ever tells people go look at my opponent's website, but I want you to. If you look at those 2 and you think these right, please consider supporting him, because this is our one chance. If that other guy gets in, he'll be there for 25 years, and you will not be able to get him out. It's just because he's part of the Democrats. You'll be able to get me out, as a Republican, but you won't be. It's just a fact. So so please do that. And then the final thing is yard signs. And so one thing, the Democrats are very good. They put people who are Democrat supporters put yard signs out like almost year round. Like, there might not even be an election going on, and they're doing it. They don't have any, they don't hold back at all doing that. But conservatives tend to be more, I don't want to push my politics in your face. I want to be respectful of you. And so my plea is, if you support our campaign, don't see that as putting it in their face. Just putting that yard sign is just making a statement of, look, I stand for these values. And we shouldn't feel bad about exercising that First Amendment right. And even if you're not in the 11th district, if you put a Stewart Whitson sign, people that are in our district drive through your neighborhoods and stuff, and it just shows like, hey, we do support them. And I will say this, once you do that, you'll notice they start popping up around, because once leaders show that they're willing to voice that, then other people kind of follow suit. But anyway, so that's all I got. Thank you so much for coming out. Thanks again for opening up your place and for hosting me. And I look forward to any questions you have. So thank you.
Last year I was a Democrat candidate for U.S. Congress, District 10. Second Nepali American running in the United States for U.S. Congress. One of the things what I would say, the Nepali people, especially Nepali American, whatever that leadership, whether they're Democrat, Republican, whatever it is, put it on the side, evaluate, and then vote for it. Do you have any specific message to Nepali American if I ask, why should I vote for you as a citizen? Right now I'm running media stuff, so I'm here as a media person. But why should I vote for you? Yes, you serve the country, in the military and the FBI and all of these things, all good stuff. But who you are.
I'll say this that I've come away. Number one is Republicans don't do enough to show up and be there and listen. And so that's one thing that's different from me from all the others, is that I am going to show up. I've already shown that I'm willing to do that. This is early. We're just in a special election, but I'm someone that is going to show up, and it's because I care. And I don't think my running opponent is doing that at all, but whether he is or not, I am someone. I'm different from previous Republicans, so they have to understand that. Number two, I'm not a politician. I've never run for office before. I think that's a strength. I think that's actually a good thing. And so I think a lot of people in our district are tired of politicians that make claims that I want to do this, I'm going to do that. Everything I'm saying I'm going to do, it's go look at my past and see if my actions back up what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm going to be tough on crime. You should go look at my past and be like, do I believe this, kind of thing. And so I think, so all that to say is you will know what you're going to get. And if you don't like it, that's okay, because everyone's different, but it's like, at least this guy's authentic and this is what he stands for. And so I know what I'm getting. And then the third thing I'll say is, even meeting with all the different communities, especially the Nepalese community, is all the things that we care about most are shared universally. Like, all good people in our district, no matter what your background is, you care about your family and you want them to have a good education. You want them to be taught how to think, not what to think. You want to know that when you drop them off at school, that they're in a safe, loving environment where they're going to learn, that they're not pushing any ideology or any political stuff right or left. You don't want either of those. You just want, this is a place where they go to learn, and they're taught good values. They're taught to treat people kindly, but that doesn't mean you have to, get away from our values, and they're taught to respect their parents. So the big difference between, and this is kind of a Republican Democrat thing, is I'm about empowering parents. Everything I said, putting money in parents, I'm not punishing the schools. I'm saying use that money to go to a public school if you want, but we have to empower parents, because parents are who looks over the kids. And so that's the problem on the left, is they don't want the parents to have the power. They want the school administrators to have the power even over the parents. And so to me, that is just wrong. That is backward and wrong. And I think most of the people in the Nepalese community who I've talked to, I think, would agree with that they think the parents should be in charge, not the bureaucrats. And then the last thing I'd say, the most important thing is look at him and his family, because I think that speaks, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but it's also, I'm married for 20 years. I have 5 kids that are all, that are school aged. So is this guy going to care about keeping families safe? Is he going to care about values that we all share? Is he going to care about making sure they have education opportunities? Of course, because he has 5 kids doing all that. And so that, I guess that'd be my point. And I will say this: so we have this short-term election. This is just so hard. It's not even a sprint; it's a race. There just isn't enough time to meet everyone, and I'm not entitled to anyone's vote, even Republicans. Like you have to earn it, and especially communities, Nepalese, Chinese American, Vietnamese, all those. Like you have to show up and earn that vote. But I'll say of all the groups I've met, and I said this, the Nepalese community was the warmest welcome I've had. It was like overwhelming. How everyone coming in and greeting me as I was coming in, and it was just wonderful. And I know for a fact there was Democrats there, Republicans there, Independents there, none of the above there. And the reason they were doing that is because they're good people who there's certain values that are taught, like, hey, if someone's coming here, be nice and greet them nicely, even if you disagree, and then ask questions. And people ask questions, you could tell they disagreed, but it was never rude. There was no name calling. And I've gone to other groups and there's name calling and stuff. And so all that to say is, like, I love the Nepalese community. I think the more they learn about me, they'll see it's the same values that we all share. And I would be a great advocate. And I think the legal issues, constituent services is one of the most important things. And I'll be someone that'll fight to help the people in the community resolve issues.
So I just want to add one thing. Being as a disabled veteran, serving in the U.S. Army for 14 years.
Thank you for
enlisted officer, both Mustang.
Me too.
One of the things, my own experience, and I want everybody to understand, a lot of people have a question, what have you done for the community? But they don't realize what we have done for the country, entire country. Putting your life in danger, not only yourself, but also putting your family and the children in the stressful situation, not knowing whether you make it back home safely or not, but you're still proud, right? So hats off to you for doing that. You know, the one question in between, I'm going to say, there are always difference, even in a husband and wife, right, with two different persons.
Yep.
But I think for the sake of the kids, we got to work together. That means, are you the leader completely on the one side, or you're a more center-leaning leader that would you be able to speak out if there's something wrong, even within your own group, right? Being standing for the people. I think as a leader, you serve the constituents, not this party. Party is the path to get there as your ideology, wherever it belongs to. But when the voters of your constituent, they vote for you, the expectation is he's going to stand as long as I'm right. He's going to go for right versus wrong, not this party versus that party. Should they count on you that if you get elected, that they can look at it and say, just the way I used to say when I ran, I never served Democrat or Republican, I served American. Right? And especially now with all this immigrant situation, deportation, all of this thing, a lot of immigrants are scared. And I say you don't have to be scared. If you have done nothing wrong, you're fine. They're going after the bad guys. And if you have done bad thing, you should be scared, right? But just on that fact, if you can highlight a little bit of, can they look at you as a leader to serve? Because if you get elected, you will be a congressman for all the constituents, despite their Republican or Democrat, right? You're going to serve them, treat them equally. And can the community count on you on that, if you can want to highlight that?
So 100% you can. I will say this, anyone sitting in my seat is going to say 100% you can count on me to do that, but I'm going to tell you why you can actually believe me and not believe the other guy in a second. But so first and foremost, I am an America First conservative, but what that means is it's whoever you're in, the area that you've been entrusted to serve has to come first. Everything you do, every decision you make, everything you vote for, vote against, there has to be a moment where you pause and say, is this what's in the best interest for the people I serve? And so President Trump is America First because he serves America. And so that's how that works, is before he sends someone to a foreign war, no matter what the situation is, he pauses for a moment and says, is this in America's best interest? Before he creates a tariff or does something else. That's what he's doing. And so for me though, that's Virginia 11. That's the people in Northern Virginia and saying, how does this impact them? And so I have to do it. That's my moral obligation, because we are not a democracy, we are a republic. And so people are electing me to be their representative. Now I'm running on a platform, and I do think there's moral issues and there's political issues. And a moral issue could be, involve life and death. and things like that, but a political issue is immigration policy. Like, there's no one right or wrong way to do immigration policy. It's you need to listen and be able to come up with smart ideas. And so all that to say, yes, you can count on me. But why can you believe me when I say I'll represent all people? It's because we are in an area that has way more Democrats than Republicans. So if I get elected in a special election and I don't do things that make everyone happy in the district, I will be out of a job in a year because there's another election in 2026. And so if I come in there and I say no, then I'll be out of a job. But if my opponent gets in, he won't, because he's a Democrat. He will be far to one side. He will blindly oppose anything President Trump does or the Republicans do without any thought of, wait, does that same calculus I was saying? Because he would have voted for the largest tax increase in American history. The child tax credit would have been cut in half. Everyone, I'm guessing most of the people in this room use the standard deduction like I do, because 90% of tax filers do that. That would have jumped. That's your taxes would have gone up by about, I think in Virginia it's $14,800 is the average, is how much you would have paid, and so he would have voted against that solely to take political shots at President Trump, not because it's what's best or not. And then the last thing I'll say is the media is not on our side. And so the other thing you have to do is when a policy comes out and it benefits the people in your district, your job is to let them know that, is to explain it to them and convince them when it does, and if it doesn't, the same goes true. And so sometimes I think policies will come out from the Trump administration and the media will just parrot the same talking points and say, no, this is bad for people. And so if that's true, then you need to be an honorable person and say that. But if it's not, then you need to show facts and take the media on and be someone that can explain so people understand, no, this is actually better in especially legislation. There's never going to be a piece of legislation that's perfect because you have to do compromises. And so that's why at the end of the day,
American citizen, as a former soldier, I really appreciate what you have done.
Yeah. And you touched on the families. So I was gone from my wife for 22 months for that deployment. And honestly, I think the safety part of it, I bet the same to you. I was worried less about getting hurt. It was more just like I missed my family, and just like every day, and you're hoping, you're like, sounds hard that your wife's gonna be faithful, and so I had a good wife who was faithful and waited for me, and so that's why.
Tell a lot of deers, John.
Yeah.
It's gone really, really high after the pandemic. The price of an apartment before the pandemic in Northern Virginia used to be $1,400, and now it's going to $2,400 when we talk about Tyson's Corner and all those areas. What plans do you have in place to address that, or can you make any impact on the price of housing?
A huge impact right away. And so the biggest problems with the price of housing are two. Mm-hmm. It's mortgage rates that are going up, so constantly rising interest rates, and it's property taxes. Mm-hmm. And so I told you, my opponent raised your property taxes by 7%, and they've gone up 60% in this district over the last 10 years. And so nowadays, it used to be when I bought my first home with my wife, I didn't even think about property taxes. I went online and you would look at the housing price and there'd be a calculator and you'd say, okay, what's my mortgage gonna be? And you do the math. But nowadays, because we live in a county that they've raised the taxes so much, people, when you factor the taxes in, it almost adds extra mortgage payments. And so all that to say is it's made housing so expensive. And then the other problem, the interest rate. So interest rates are so high, they need to come down. But the reason they're high is because the Biden administration just spent billions of dollars on reckless executive branch spending. And so the short-term benefit to the Biden administration is it basically bought them. It was an attempt to buy votes. And like, I'll forgive your student loan debt overnight. And people are like, yeah, I'll vote for it. That's great. But the problem is when you dump all that money into the economy, it creates inflation, and then that drives up interest rates on houses. And so so do the math. If you go on those calculators, if you say, man, if I had a 3% interest rate versus a 6%, it's a night and day difference. That's the difference between a young family that wants to have their first home deciding to do that or not. And so now what's the next problem? This is where it gets to the rent. Well, now if you can't afford to get into the house, then all of you are competing for the same apartments. And if you're all competing for the same apartments, they can raise the price and you'll pay it because you can't afford it. You don't have the option to get into a house because they've raised the prices so much. And so again, my opponent's solution to all this, you know what it is? Raise the real estate taxes even more by 7% because it's never enough for him. And then the other thing is he's going to build affordable housing. So they're building government issued housing in the parking lot of the early voting site. I'm not making this up. So it's a big apartment building where these people, we will be taxed and will pay for this housing, and they're trying to push people into that, and then hoping that then they'll walk across the parking lot and vote every time, and honestly they will. The people that live there probably will. And so that is the problem with their model. It's like he wants to give, that's his solution. Let's give some affordable housing. I want you to own a nice, big, beautiful home. And so the way that we do that is we stop the reckless spending at the executive level. I want to pass a provision called the Regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny Act. What it would do is it would require federal agencies to get congressional approval before they spend that money. So that would lower the interest rates and it would stop all the wasteful spending. And not to go too far in the weeds, but Biden spent $1.7 trillion with the stroke of a pen. So he didn't go, so we're all taught in school that no, Congress has the power of the purse. They spend money, the executive branch, but that's not how it works nowadays. They did it through executive fiat. And so he, unilaterally increased food stamps by $20 billion a year right before the midterm election with the stroke of a pen. He passed a rule called the Medicaid streamlining rule that kept illegal aliens from it kept states from kicking them off the rolls. And so that's why when you saw the big beautiful bill, they said all these people are going to lose health insurance. 1.4 million of the people they said were getting cut from Medicaid were illegal aliens who weren't entitled to be on the program in the first place. The others were people that had Medicaid in 2 states. They didn't even live in the state anymore, so they didn't use that. But it was still costing $12 billion a year or whatever to the government. They got rid of that one, and they still had Medicaid coverage, but they called that a cut. And so that was 5.8 million people they said were getting cut, were just people that were dual enrolled. They were losing one they're not really using, saving us billions of dollars. And so this is what I mean. So this is why we have to be able to go to the media and say the facts and say, I know they're saying it's being cut, but here's why it's not, and explain it. And so, but anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, and the other thing, so if we bring economic opportunities, so the other problem with my opponent, there was an energy company that was going to bring 800 new jobs into Fairfax County. Guess what the average salary was for those 800 positions that were going to come here? Average, $150,000 was the average salary, 800 new jobs. But my opponent didn't close the deal. So to have a company come in, you have to give them tax incentives, and give them some assurity that you're not going to raise their taxes. And they would have brought those 800 jobs in, and the good 800 jobs. And so that's just one of many different things. And so they are driving up tax rates in our county. For the first time ever, we're losing people. People are actually moving out of it. I guarantee you probably know people that lived in Fairfax County and they're moving out to the outer areas because they want to have a bigger house that's a little more affordable. And so that we need the opposite. We should be attracting new businesses, and people should want to live here mainly. So
Also, another question: how are you going to address the data center that has been, recently, there has been a lot of data centers in Virginia.
Yeah.
If you look at the stats, I think Virginia is, probably number 1, number 2, and number 3 that holds the most amount of data center in the world, right? So that creates, again, environmental issues, right? The hot air coming out of the data centers and all that. Plus, the temperature is going higher, right? How would you address that? The global warming, the data center, the data center infrastructure, and obviously will create new jobs. But then I think that's another reason as well why the price of the land in Loudoun County, or the price of the houses in Loudoun County is getting better, because the price of the housing is going higher and higher because there are a lot of data centers there, and the big tech companies, they want to buy those land and then build a data center. How would you address that, or what are the plans that you have in place?
Yeah, I think so. It's a lot of that is a local decision to be made whether you want a data center or not, because it can also bring jobs. I will say on the environmental, because you kind of asked 2 different questions. One was on the data centers, and then also kind of the environmental.
Because they're, I think, interrelated. Because I think I was in Austin, Texas last year, and the temperature was really high. Being Australia is a very hot country, when I moved to Austin, Texas, it was pretty dry and it was really hot. I do have 2 kids, and they were most of the time indoor. So I decided to move to Virginia because it's, the weather is more pleasant. But then I came
Until
to
like
find-
last week.
Yeah,
Why in the world? I know,
I
but
came to
that's
find
not
out
normal.
from my friends
It's not-
and
it's not-
family
yeah.
that they have been saying the temperature of Virginia is going higher as well. And then when I started looking the stats and looking the data, that I came to find out in recent years there are so many data centers here. Plus, the traffic is going higher. So basically the amount of heat that's getting generated here is higher. And plus, I think that's also impacting the global warming. So
Yeah.
that's another reason why I asked that question.
No, and I just so for my issue on climate is we have to be rational, and I think there's some people on both sides. Like we have to be good stewards of the environment. I want to have a clean, safe environment, clean water, and all those kind of things. But you also don't want to. You have to think about economic implications. You have to think about national security implications. And so I think sometimes people that on the climate side get so almost like obsessed with that as an issue that they ignore those others. Not you, I'm not saying you, but I'm saying also on the other side, some people ignore it completely. And so we need some balance. For energy, we need an all-of-the-above solution. I think nuclear reactors, modern nuclear reactors, are smaller and they're safer and they're a good way to compromise. So it's clean energy for people that care about that, but it's also good, reliable, useful energy. I will say, like with, the climate folks support windmills. Just that is like one of the ugliest. Like if you've ever driven by those, it destroys the landscape. And they might be the same people making an argument they don't want a data center that destroys. And so to me, that doesn't make sense. So I don't think, and those aren't reliable uses of power. It's like solar, and there's national security implications. If they're components created by China, that can make us susceptible to. Where they can create national security implications, but all the other stuff, the nuclear power, I think is huge. Data set, I would say though, it's like we want to be a leader in technology. Obviously, AI is going to be a big thing, and we don't want to run away from that. It's going to be something that's involved, touching everything, and so I think that can be a way to attract a lot of business, attract a lot of opportunities for young people to get into really great careers, and I think the data centers are part of that. But again, I don't see any big. I don't know, Fairfax County is pretty congested, so I don't know.
In the military, but I did work as a contractor and deployed to Djibouti, Africa, overseeing Africa, the Middle East, and Europe for Lockheed Martin. I was in fact in Djibouti for 4.5 years, overseeing the business operations of Camp Lemonnier and CZT of HOA. After all that, I wanted to stay back home and start my own business. It's been a little over a year. I've got two questions. One, the compliance requirements is for small business is so burdensome, especially when you're a solopreneur. Do you want to do your own business, or do you want to, do paper pusher, just like a doctor's office? That's one. And the second question I have is, as a solopreneur, now that I don't have the benefit of a employer-sponsored healthcare, I have to pay for myself and my wife, and it's expensive. It's almost like my mortgage. In my late 50s. What kind of plan or vision do you have to address those two things? One, maybe streamline the process with SBA and the state government, as well as some federal regulations. Two, healthcare is a necessity, and it should be affordable, because after 20 years, I took the courage to plunge in and start a business of my own. Right? People will hesitate when they realize the cost and benefits of starting a business, because 95% of small business that start close down within 2 years. I'm running close to 2 years. Hopefully, I will survive. But my question is, how can you, address that issue? I know it's a national issue, and every party, whether it's Democrat or Republican, every time they come and promise that they will bring in affordable, healthcare. When I was an international student in 2006, I was paying about $300 for myself, my wife, and my two school-going kids. I am paying just for my wife and myself now 5 times that amount. So that tells you it hasn't been affordable.
Yeah.
What a vision or plan do you have towards solving that issue?
So first question, 100%, we need more deregulation. And so anyone knows that. I mean, and I always tell us that if you do your own taxes, then you get kind of a flavor of what regulation is, and what that is it's you don't know if you don't know. So when you're starting a new business, you're spending so much time researching what rules, what kind of how do I need to formulate this company as an LLC, as a corp, or whatever? And then there's all these other requirements to get approved as a contractor through the SBA. So we need to streamline that process, get rid of as much regulation as we can, so that we can open up businesses. Most of the new jobs that are created in the country, like 2/3 of those, come from small businesses.
Correct.
So it's not even just you. And so if you get rid of that regulation and you can stop wasting your time doing that, and you can instead start getting some contracts and moving forward, you can hire more people. And so that's good for our economy. So we need to make that easier. Your second question on healthcare. So I actually helped push forward a bill, and it's easy to remember because it's HR 1776. But it's Representative Gary Palmer from Alabama. It's called the New Health Options Act. And so what it would do is it would be set up a parallel structure alongside Obamacare. And so if you want to keep your Obamacare, you can, but you just set up this structure next to it that's more affordable and it's more suited for people that maybe don't want the full coverage. Because a lot of the people that are going in Obamacare, the reason it's so expensive is because you're paying for all the rest of the people in Obamacare, so you're having to pay higher rates for them. And so if we had this parallel structure, another thing you could go to, you wouldn't have to do that. The other problem, the reason you're paying rates that are so high is because they allowed so many illegal immigrants to get onto the program and receive health benefits. And it turns out someone's got to pay that, right?
Right.
And so what is that? It's people like you who are actually starting a business. You're getting taxed to pay for that so they can try to buy those votes. And and how they buy votes with illegal aliens, I think everyone knows this, but it's not those illegal aliens necessarily going to vote. But if they come into a state and they stay there, when they do the census, that counts towards their electoral votes and the number of the seats they get. And so that's why California and all those other states, when they have those mass migration of illegal immigrants right before a census, that's a way to just get extra seats so that they can then they can use gerrymandering, as everyone's pricing that in the news, to then turn those into Democrat seats. And then they have a disproportionate sway in Congress. And so anyway, so all that to say, so number one, you stop illegal, if you get illegal immigrants and people that aren't legally allowed to be on some of these welfare programs off, then you keep the people that we want on those, so the senior citizens, elderly, disabled people, women in poverty, children in poverty, you want to keep them on those programs, but healthy, able-bodied adults who have work, so some of them are actually in work and are making work, we want to help them find other opportunities, and they can get health care through their employers, these other people. And so if you get those people out of the system, and so they're going to like Lockheed,
Right.
and they're getting healthcare from Lockheed, then that's less people that you're paying, you're having to pay for too, so that helps the system. But anyway, so check that out, it's HR 1776. And then the other thing that's related to that is hospital price transparency and drug price transparency. And so that's a simple concept where you say, so anytime you guys have gone, if you have a kid that hurts themselves and you go to the emergency room, you have no idea what you're about to pay, right? You're on your way there and you're like, man, I'm scared. Like it's not an option, right? You're gonna go get stitches or whatever. And then you come home and you still don't really know, but you're gonna get charged, and then the bill shows up in the mail. And so hospital price transparency is just saying, no, hospitals should have these things that happen all the time, that should be on their site so you know what that is, and you can shop around and you can know, hey, there's 2 hospitals that are close, this one has better prices, I can use those. And all this to say too is they also bill people different, so you could have the same procedure done at a hospital, and I could have that same procedure done at that same hospital, and we might pay 2 entirely different prices because of different special interest groups. And so that should be the same. It should be transparent. And by the way, the cash price, so some people pay with cash and pay more or pay less, and so it should just be the same price if you want to go in. And so all those things would bring down the cost. And so and then the last thing is prescription drugs. I think we're pushing prescription drugs on people that don't need it. And if they're people that are on welfare and they don't have to pay for it, they're not gonna, if someone says, take this drug, it'll make you feel better, it'll make you feel happier, and you don't have to pay for it, you'll just do it. But we could be like hooking people on drugs, and those are really expensive. Pharmaceutical companies like that, because it helps them make a lot of money because the government, but that would bring down healthcare costs a lot if we just said, wait, before you prescribe a really expensive drug, we need to have some kind of better check in there to make sure the person really needs to be on that we don't inhibit that. And then obviously drugs are manufactured in the US, and we pay more for that same drug than people in another country that are buying the drug from the US, and it's coming to Canada, and they pay less than we do. And so to me, it's like, why? Doesn't make any sense. Like, why would that be? And so this is why with the whole tariffs thing, it kind of throws people off. But what the president's doing, some of them are just unfair tariffs and need to be raised. Some of it's more negotiating and just trying to create balance. And I'm taking this into another.
I do see three,
Yeah.
areas that could be, control, like the boundaries. For example, if I want to go to Anthem, Cape First, Blue Shield, I cannot do that because I am west of Route 123.
Yep.
Right? So you have those boundaries. That's one.
That's in the new Health Options Act. So
Right.
if you're out of network, you pay in-network costs.
Right.
Yes,
And
that's in that act. I was saying.
and then the second thing is, I think there should be transparency in pricing.
Yep.
So, if I'm going for a particular surgery, let's say I'm going to a dentist for a root canal treatment, right? There should be some kind of a standard price or a range that you ought to pay, whether you're paying. Third, I think, is getting rid of too many intermediaries between the service provider and the service receiver. I think there are, in the healthcare industry, there are too many layers of, intermediaries that creates a problem.
Yep, you're spot on. And all that's in the new Health Options Act. And a fourth one, which is a tax benefit to take money out and put into a health savings account, is you can strengthen those so that people can take more money tax-free.
Right.
And have the government not and say, this is so I can pay my own health care and stuff, and so you can put more money. That's another thing that's in there that I think would also drive down, or help people at least. It'll drive down costs. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll look into that.